Kids getting more and more into the internet, and it's kind of taken over life. So we've done shows on bullied to death and that sort of stuff because they get on there and they get bullied. You used to get bullied at school, and you go home, you were at least away from it. Now it follows you home.
Yeah.
Kids can't get away from it. It's cyberbullying.
That's what's scary. And they're so connected to social media. It's not like an adult that could just ignore it and walk away. They also don't have the coping mechanisms that an adult who's been through a lot of adversity has acquired. These are young, developing people.
Yeah, and they're not developing thick skins like I was talking about. They're just hypersensitive to this. And you got to let your kid needs to go through getting teased some, getting excluded some, getting, breaking up and all of that, so they learn, hey, I came back from that. It's okay. Yeah. I was able to get through it.
It's a part of the development process, but some kids don't come back from it.
And it's terrible. Parents, they ask me a lot, how do I know if my kid's getting bullied? Well, you need to ask yourself two questions. How do you know if your kid's getting bullied? And how do you know if your kid's a bully? Because kids are bullying kids, so some parent needs to know that their kid's doing the bullying. You got to ask those two things. And the answer to that question, how do you know if your kid's getting bullied? Every parent has a baseline for their child, right? You know how your child behaves. There's a certain level of interaction, participation, certain moods, certain verbalization, certain interest in activities. You got to watch that baseline, and if they depart from that baseline, that's when you need to pay attention. Now, kids are up and down, so I'm not talking about if they're a little moody on Tuesday versus Monday. But if they start not wanting to go to school, they start withdrawing from everything, they start regressing in their behavior, things they used to be competent at, all of a sudden they're not competent anymore. They get clingy, whiny, lots of stomach aches, don't want to go to school. They just start really falling off that baseline across time. That's when you want to really pay attention because they very well may be getting bullied. And if your child, you start hearing them make jokes at other people's expense, somebody that was around is all of a sudden excluded, they start showing up with things you didn't buy them, book bags or any paraphernalia from school or whatever, your child might be bullying somebody. And you need to find out on either end, because I did a show just last week. A girl was a terrific young woman involved in elite hockey, girls hockey, national ranked team, elite hockey. And the bullying started on day one. She killed herself on day 5. It went that fast. And this was not an unstable girl. She was a rock star athlete, and they all turned on her.
For what?
Well, it appears that she dated one of the other's ex-boyfriends, and that girl allegedly got offended, and they started and started calling her names and excluding her and blah, 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 blah. And she just panicked and thought there was just no future. Everybody hated her and thought she was no good and disrepute, and she took her own life.
God. It's so horrible when you're an adult and you've been through stuff and you know that this will pass. But kids don't feel that. They don't know that. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. They don't.
4 days. On the 5th day, she took her life. And she wiped her phone clean. She said, look, I know you're going to blame yourself. Don't do it. This was me. I'm sorry. I'm gone. Bye. And her parents were just heartbroken.
Did they talk to any of the children that were involved in the bullying?
They they dug into it, and as soon as it happened, some of the other members on the team, because all the messages had been erased, but as it was happening, some of the other members on the team screenshotted those and kept them and sent them to the parents and said, here's what happened. And they have them, and so a lot of those girls have now been suspended from the leagues and all this league play and everything because they were a nationally ranked team. And they would have never known if those girls hadn't screenshotted those messages that they were sending around to everybody and sent them to the parents. They'd have never known. But those girls came forward and said, here's what happened.
Kids can be so fucking cruel, too.
Oh, it's amazing.
There was an instance in one of my daughters when she was 10 where one of the friends of her friend was getting bullied by this one girl, and they got copies of the text messages and gave it to the mom, and the mom didn't want to believe it. And they had to say to the mom, like, look, here's real clear evidence of horrible things your kid is saying to this other kid. And this mother was sort of delusional and just didn't want to think that her kid was capable of this. But they had it right there. They're like, look, this is how this girl behaves. Then the kids sort of ostracized her. And I mean, she was 10 at the time, and I think she's kind of come around. But there's people like getting an effect from other people. And when people are angry at people, especially young kids, they'll formulate sentences in a way that can have the most impact and be the most mean possible, especially if they see that kind of talk in their house. Like maybe if the parents are insulting and scream at each other and say horrible things to each other, that's how they learn.